For the State Senate District 5, this would be the Republican primary. With us today is Steve Kirk, former City Councilman of Henderson, and Annette, you pronounce it for me?
Teijeiro.
Teijeiro, okay. She's a doctor here in Las Vegas. She's an alum of Bishop Gorman, as I am. Mr. Kirk is, like I said, former city councilman, and Mr. Kirk, this doesn't have anything to do with potholes today. You're moving to a different level.
I appreciate that.
Okay, so if I could kind of start this off, I guess my question would be, to kick this off, is do both of you support the Ryan budget as introduced right now? And also regarding women's health, because the Ryan budget for the panelists, is that important to us here in Nevada? It's extremely important to us here in Nevada, because if that money is reduced, there goes our money. So I would want to know if you support the Ryan budget, and then also get into the women's health issue, since we have a doctor with us, and would you support specifically the reproductive women's health issues that should be covered by insurance, because that affects us here in Nevada, and as chairman of the Commerce Committee, we had to rule on those issues here.
Okay.
So
You'll have minutes for your answers. This thing will beep at 50 seconds, and I'll count down your last 5 with fingers.
Mr. Kirk, Mr. Kirk, if you could start us off.
Sure, thank you very much. I appreciate being here today, and thanks for taking the opportunity. The Ryan budget, I can't say that I've studied it enough to really know what our position ought to be. I know that he came out with it. I can tell you this, though, if it's something that hurts us in this state, it would not be something that I would support. I want to be a state senator who will support legislation that helps Nevadans. That's number one most important thing to me. And the same goes for the women's health issues. If there's policies out there that are injuring women, not providing health care, then I think they need to be looked at and reviewed. I'm a big health advocate for women's rights and women's health issues, and I think that that's where the state of Nevada ought to be as well. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Doctor?
Yes, I'm Dr. Annette Teijeiro. As far as the Ryan budget goes, no, I have not studied the Ryan budget. One of the fundamental things that we do have to be careful of in our state, and that's why I'm running for state senate, this is very clear, is when the federal government mandates things to the state, there must be limits. And one of the things that our neighboring state, Utah, did was it actually developed a committee where things that the federal government mandated are reviewed to make sure that they are in the best interest of its state citizens. And I would recommend, if I am elected to the legislature, to do such a thing. Because one of the things that we have is we have sovereignty as a state, and there are limited powers to the federal government. Yes, they do impact us, but they should impact us in a way that's favorable to Nevadans.
All right, thank you. Now, since I kicked it off to begin with, and kind of gave a short bio, but if you'd please do a bio on yourself, Mr. Kirk.
I was born in Boulder City, raised in Henderson, in fact raised in the district. The house that I grew up in is still right in the downtown part of Henderson in Senate District 5. I've been married for 30 years. My wife and I have 5 children, all boys except 4. I served for 12 years on the Henderson City Council and had the wonderful experience of being a servant for the people. And prior to that, I served for 7 years on the Parks and Recreation Board in Henderson. And so I've been involved in political issues and politics for many years, and am very excited to be running for State Senate District 5.
Thank you, Dr. Carroll.
Yes, my name is Dr. Annette Teijeiro, and I am the mother of 3 lovely children who I love very much. My husband is a Vietnam-era vet, so veteran issues are important to me. I am a physician. I am not a politician. My reason for coming out and basically giving my intellect, my knowledge, is to basically represent the people of Nevada. I went into healthcare to help people, and this is just a further step in helping people. I can put people to sleep as an anesthesiologist on a daily basis, or I can impact 2.7 million Nevadans' healthcare, which is crucial now with the new federal healthcare law, which has not been repealed at this point. I have served as department chair at hospitals. I have basically served on the quality assurance committees, and I am also a board of trustee member of the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Brown?
We always start with that.
Good afternoon, thank you for attending. Earlier, one of the senators had mentioned that as a state senator, you can do a writ of mandamus. Our Clark County, there's a statute basically that states 1/3 of our education system should be charter schools. That is not being complied with. What would you do to get Clark County in compliance?
Ladies first, or was it men?
Whoever went first, didn't go first last time.
Yeah,
I guess
Doctor,
you-
why don't you hit it?
If the people of Nevada, especially the people that are my constituents, want to have those charter schools in their school system, absolutely. It is our job as state senators to represent our constituents. I am a firm believer of charter schools. I'm also a firm believer of school choice. Basically, if you have school choice, you could basically have your constituents be able to choose which school their kids are going to go to. This is very important because parents need to have a say and children need to have the option of going to a school that better serves them. And each school has its unique properties, it has its teachers, it has areas of expertise, and we should be able to choose which area our children have. This would also work for special needs children too.
Mr. Kirk?
I feel that choice is very, very important to furthering the educational quality in Southern Nevada. If you look at the state of Florida and compare that to the state of Nevada, Florida instituted some real changes starting in about 1999, and they have improved their educational system dramatically, while in the state of Nevada we have pretty much plateaued and flatlined. I think there are some things that we can learn. And school choice wasn't the only thing that Florida implemented, but it was one of the things they did, and it made a big difference. And so I'm a big supporter of that as well.
Mr. Brown?
I want to ask a question about gay marriage, but I guess my question actually is more fundamental, and this is my question to each of you. Do you believe that being gay is a conscious choice that is made, or do you think it's the way the person is born?
Mr. Kirk?
That's an interesting question. I would say mostly that it's a lifestyle choice. That's about the easiest way I can say it. I think it's a choice someone makes to be gay or be heterosexual.
Doctor?
Well, I must say that I'm heterosexual, so I obviously have never experienced that lifestyle. Whether human beings are biologically programmed or whether they are behaviorally programmed to do that is still out. There are no scientific research studies that actually answer that question very well. My opinion is somewhat colored by the fact that I'm a heterosexual, but I can't, as a physician, I can't really answer to you which one it is because I'm not in somebody else's body to figure out whether that was something that happened to them when they were born or not. So at this point in time, I can tell you that scientifically I can't determine those two.
Thank you.
You don't have a personal opinion? You don't have a belief? What do you think? I'm not asking you to be a scientist, I'm just asking you what you think.
Honestly, I have friends that have chosen that lifestyle. I don't I don't see them any different, so I guess I don't have a direct opinion on that.
Well, obviously, the point of the question is that if a person is born that way, it would seem more unfair to deny that person the right to marry whomever he or she loves. If it's a choice, I think that argument would be less compelling. That's the reason for my question. It bears on whether a state treats individuals equally. It's an equal protection issue. That's the only reason I ask.
Okay, we're gonna go on. I don't think they're prepared to answer that at this time, but the next interview with the next group, maybe be prepared. Mr. Lauer.
Real quick, before I start, did you both have a chance to review and sign the pledge for the legislation, proposed legislation?
I
Is
just,
that the no tax pledge?
No.
Pledge.
It's a legislation that we're proposing to fund create a commission, citizens commission, to identify state assets, to vote and name fallen members of the armed forces who died in Iraq and Afghanistan after them. So that's some legislation we're proposing, and I should have received a pledge to review and sign when we came in here. If you get a chance to do that before you leave. My question to you is this. Would you support legislation that would require state, county, public organizations, fire, police, if the applicants were equal, to hire the veteran first, and give the priority to returning veterans in hiring by the state, county, local authorities, police, and fire?
my feeling on that is I think we end up in a very slippery slope when we do that. Because first it's the veterans, then it's any number of special interest groups that have special circumstances in their life who feel that they ought to be given special priority over somebody else. My dad was an electrician for 40 years in Clark County. And I remember when I was a boy, he came home and said that they had instituted a system it was a quota system where they had to hire a certain number of ethnic groups. And my dad, that really bothered my dad, because it took 2 fellows or 3 fellows that were equally qualified, or maybe one who was more qualified, and they had to hire the other person who wasn't as qualified, and I think that they suffered for that. So I think when you start mandating those kinds of things, you're always going to run into people who feel they have a special requirement to get a competitive advantage over somebody else.
Thank you. Dr. Jones?
You know, first of all, I want to say that veterans are diverse in race, religion, creed. So putting that forth, when you give priority to a vet, my understanding would be to give priority because they have served our country. They have basically been someone who has sworn allegiance to the United States and support the U.S. Constitution. Someone like that is someone that I would like to employ. So keeping that in mind, yes, priority can be given on that fact. However, if the person is not equally qualified as the other individual, then we have to look at how do we use taxpayer money efficiently. And we're not going to be hiring people that are inexperienced to basically do that job. But I think veterans do. They have basically sworn allegiance. They have made a sacrifice for this country. That should count for something more.
All right, thank you. Next question.
Maybe we should time our questions too. Of the things that Nevada does as economic policy or programs to try to improve the economy, what is most in the way and should be gotten rid of? That is, what should we stop doing that's actually a problem instead of a solution?
Doctor?
You know, there are a lot of things in our budget that could be addressed. One example of it is the renewable portfolio standards. We have basically mandated that our utility companies start to use X amount of technology to renewable energy sources. Now is not the time, with the economy as poorly as it is, to basically say to our citizens and to companies, you have to pay more for utilities because we think it's a good idea. Because when you do that, you know, when someone's underemployed or unemployed and you're gonna raise their utility bill, their power bill, there are only certain things that they can do to cut that bill. Same thing for businesses. So when you look at these economic changes, that's an area that we could back off on. Perhaps when we're doing much, much better, we can take that back up. But let's be a little bit more common sense about things.
Mr. Kirk?
You know, I think that one thing that government ought to do is get out of the way and allow job creators to do what they do best, and that's create employment opportunities for other people. You know, I had a call this last week from a mother whose son was trying to set up a shave ice stand in the county and couldn't get through the government bureaucracy to get it approved. This is a kid that is taking a risk. You know, he spent about $4,500 on buying all the equipment, and now the government stands in the way of him not only starting to live kind of his dreams, but also provide jobs for other people. And it's because of government bureaucracy that this one instance, but I think that those instances are all over throughout the state. And so cutting red tape and freeing up people who want to create jobs is something that the state government can do and should do.
Thank you. One more question from the panel. Karen?
Good afternoon, and thank you for being here today. Along the lines of state sovereignty, I'd like to know if either one of you are aware of United Nations Agenda 21, ICLI, and the fact that Oscar Goodman has signed Las Vegas up for the ICLI program, and what your thoughts are on those.
Mr. Kirk, are you?
I am not familiar with that. Could you tell us a little bit more about it?
Well, UN Agenda 21 is the United Nations agenda for sustainable living in the 21st century, and it's basically social engineering. It's a worldwide plan to dictate to people how to live, where to live, what to eat, what to drive. And it kind of goes along what Ms. Teijeiro was saying about the energy companies dictating to us what technology they'll use in providing us energy, and that we have to accept it.
Well, you know, I can't think of hardly anything the United Nations does that I support. And if that falls in that category, then I mean it seems a little crazy to me that the United Nations would be, or that any local politician would be signing up to have you know, us sign on to that kind of a policy. It's dangerous.
If you're really opposed to that, you might want to look into it, because we are.
Doctor?
Thank you.
As I stated before, it's very important for us to look at these things that impact our state. There is, like I said, our neighboring state who has come up with the review process. If the federal government is going to basically implement things that the United Nations wants, then we need to look at it as a state and say, do we think that this is in the best interest of Nevadans? So obviously the answer to your question is, no, I don't support us adopting Agenda 21. Whenever outside sovereign nations are dictating to the United States what it needs to do on a global level, you have to frown and say, what's in the best interest of the United States of America? What's in the best interest of the state of Nevada? And that's what I want to promote as a state senator, is what's in the best interest of Nevadans. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Candidates, we will excuse you and let the